This is a video about how to do maintenance on your oil-fired boiler. I have a combi boiler. This thing is very old, but it works. And some of the maintenance that you can do if you feel up to it, if you're competent and qualified to be able to do it, is to replace the nozzle that's in here that sprays the oil. When the oil gets pulled in through there from the pump, it sprays it. That's where the furnace is. It heats that, and then it heats up the water tank in here, which then goes to the radiators, as well as a coil where you may get your domestic hot water. And replacing the nozzle is one part. If you don't want to do that, then you might be able to at least replace the filter. So the oil filter, when the oil gets pulled in from the tanks, before it gets to the boiler, it will go through this filter here, which you can replace, which will involve shutting off the oil, of course, shutting off the furnace, of course, and then buying the correct filter, which you should see somewhere on that canister that holds the filter or housing. And then you put something under here, catch the oil, replace the filter. And then finally, the last thing to do would be to bleed the radiators. You'll have a circulation pump which pulls the cold water back down from the radiators, sends up the hot water, and it will send up the hot water, but if you have air trapped in the radiators, it's not going to be able to push it up any further, and you may get your radiators might not be heating, so you'll want to take a key and bleed those radiators at least once a year, and then to be able to get that pressure up. The pressure pushes up the water, pushes out the air, and then you'll have a more efficient boiler. This is a quick video on how to replace the nozzle on your oil-fired boiler. Replacing the nozzle is a part of annual maintenance. You also want to get a new filter. Make sure you're getting the right size filter, and I will show you how to replace the filter in this video as well. When you get a new filter, you get a new gasket, a new washer for the bolt, possibly a tiny bleeder screw washer if you have a bleeder screw, and you should replace the nozzle if you have it listed somewhere, the size of nozzle and the gallons per hour and the degree spray of the cone. All of that is in these little numbers, and then you will replace the nozzle with a new one exactly the right size. Probably should go without saying that you would turn this off. Make sure your thermostat is off. Make sure the boiler is off, because you don't want it to be calling for heat. Obviously, you don't want to have any power on this when you take it apart. And for when you change the filter, you want to make sure that it's not going to call for heat. It's going to be off, and that your oil tanks are shut, and you have a pan underneath, and you'll take it apart. I'll show you how to do that. Let's do that. Here I have my oil-fired furnace. About to change out the nozzle in there, but today I'm going to be replacing the filter. I have my oil tanks here, which I get oil from. It comes here, and before it goes to the nozzle and the furnace, it goes through this filter here. So there's a filter inside there that I have to replace, and that will require shutting off the valves to stop the oil from flowing. It's still going to be some oil that's going to come out, which is why I have this here. You can replace the oil filter yourself, but you want to make sure you get the right filter. It's kind of hard to see here, but it should tell you what style of filter that you need to replace it with on the filter housing. Your filter will likely come with a replacement washer as well for the bolt that holds this on. You may also have a bleeder screw and a tiny little washer that goes on that as well. I do not have that little bleeder screw, so I'm going to attempt to very slowly put the oil back in by leaving this slightly open so the air purges out, and then I can tighten this. In your case, if you have a bleeder screw, you'll just unscrew that. Air will push out and eventually a little bit of oil will squirt out. When that happens, you just tighten that. But yours might look different. Mine has a large hex bolt, which I'm gonna unscrew with an adjustable wrench. You might have a smaller one that you could use a socket wrench just to quickly open that up. And there also may be something underneath here where you can put a wrench under to hold it. Alright, so this is going to be messy. A lot of oil is going to go into there. I have a funnel and I'll put a filter in there if this oil that comes out. Because a lot of the oil that's going to come out is just going to be regular oil. So I might be able to just put a filter in there and then put the oil back in from outside rather than attempting to dispose of it. We may as well reuse that. This, of course, the old filter will be trashed, and then the new one will be put on, and then this will be tightened. First things first, put something underneath here, something to catch the oil that's going to spill out. And this is paper that I put out. You can put cardboard or something, plenty of paper towels nearby to clean these. You're going to want to wash out the inside of that filter housing as well. And then a trash bag and a bucket, throw all the paper towels out. And make sure you're wearing some kind of clothes that you don't really care if you're going to get oil on. And of course, gloves, stuff on your fingers. So let's get this taken off. Let that oil pour into there, and let's take a look at that filter. Tightening these to stop the flow of oil. Hopefully there's no issue. I think this other tank is the one I use most. This tank's more of an overflow tank, but I never get that much oil at one time. It wasn't too much, but looking at this, your New filter should come with a new gasket. Doesn't even look that bad, does it? It makes it look much worse. Let's see there. In my case, our F4B replacement tube. Model number FB4. Replace filter tube annually or when clogged. Doesn't even look that bad, but it definitely needs to be replaced. It's been a couple of years, so they recommend replacing it annually. And you can see kind of a darker gunk in there. That's the stuff that settles to the bottom. If I reuse that oil, I don't want to put that stuff in there. Just soak up. Here, just kind of sop up that gunk underneath the bottom there. Some paper towels. And you can see why these filters, what these filters filter out. Should go without saying that I also have the furnace turned off. So it's not going to be calling for heat. It's not going to be pulling in, trying to pull any oil. A little bit better. Wow. Look at that. Gunk really solidifies at the bottom there. That's the stuff we really gotta get out. Just like a use a wrench, push paper towel really deep down in there. And soak some of that really nasty stuff out down there. washer for the bolt. Little ceramic washer. Your filter should come with a replacement of that as well. Filters can be purchased online. I got mine from Amazon. I won't leave a link because your filter may be different. Just look up the filter that you need. Only a few dollars when you buy them in bulk. Otherwise about 10 bucks, 12 bucks just for one with the washers and the gasket. Model number FB4. You can see that we have full flow FB4. It's got the shape, same shape as that one. And full flow FB4. Looks a little different, but maybe they had a smaller, maybe they had a different filter. Because this is definitely supposed to go in there. It can be a little bit smaller, or it can go all the way out to here. Either way, the fuel has to go through this filter, and the gunk is going to get caught in that, in the fuel. You just line it up carefully to fit in. And that's it. Just going to press up against the top of that, and then this is going to have a new washer, and it also comes with a new gasket. Old gasket wasn't that bad, so I'm going to save it just in case. Put the new gasket on, just like that. Just put it right in there. And then when you put the nut on, just make sure you have the washer. This allows it to spin as it tightens. And then your new filter may also come with this little washer there, but my particular cartridge housing does not have a bleeder screw, so I'm going to have a more difficult time bleeding out the air so oil can fill into this filter housing. And that's going to require using the bleeder valve on the pump itself. I have the new washer in there, filter. Got the new gasket here. So press it up against that as even as possible. At this point, I just hope that that gasket is pressed up against there all the way around, and then when you run fuel down in it and see if there's any leaks. Tighten it further if I have to. You hear that? Fill up slowly. obviously going to be keeping this paper under here. I can't get that any tighter. So I have funnel with a coffee filter and bottles for this fuel. That's really nothing wrong with it. It was just fuel that was in the fuel line that dumped into the container, and I can just reuse this fuel. So I'm just going to be pouring it into that. If I was going to store it, I would store it in my yellow diesel can. But this is just temporary because I'm going to put this right back into the oil tanks. I'm not going to store it. Alright, this is my Beckett AFG oil burner for my oil-fired combi boiler, and I'm going to be taking the assembly out to take a look at the nozzle and replace the nozzle and clean out everything else that I can see cleaned out. 7/16 wrench here to take this part off. Okay, a little flared part there. Needless to say, this is off. There's no power coming to it. Right, so I can just back this out. And I can look at. It's one reason to wear gloves and clothes so that you don't mind oil splashing on. So I could see the nozzle and take a look at the electrodes. So I want to take this off. So this is a 3/4 inch wrench here, just to grab onto the base of this housing, and then a 5/8. It's screwed in clockwise, so I want to take it off counterclockwise. This is the nozzle. I am almost certain that this, my filter, what this means is 1.25 gallons per hour and an 80-degree B spray. 1.25 gallons per hour. May seem kind of much for this house, but it's the one that was in it. It was the one that was written on a tag. I don't see anything printed on the burner specifying exactly which type of nozzle, but that's what was in it. So 80-degree spray, that's not temperature, that's the degree of the spray. And B is the type of cone. Hard to see on the video, but 80 degree 1.25. See the color difference just from being in the burner longer. See the difference in the color. Not too bad looking, but it's better to have a brand new one if I have all of this open up anyway. So here, that's the housing adapter, and then you can just hand tighten it and then tighten it down. Don't put any pipe dope or Teflon on it. Eventually, these electrodes should be changed. They also can be purchased. Saw some on Amazon. None of these are really too difficult to get to. Part there was able to take a little the cardboard core of a paper towel roll and a little bit of paper towel still on it. Turn it back and forth. Took out some of that soot from that part there. Alright, so shutting this part was as simple as tightening these hex head screws. These little parts here that hold that down because that swings on a hinge. And then these two parts, these two hex screws gets tightened as well. So now what I'm doing here is I have the air. I'm attempting to bleed out the air from the oil line, and hopefully this will start despite having some air in that line, because I have replaced the oil filter here. Got a brand new filter in there, new gasket, tightened. No bleeder screw, not on this particular canister, which is why I'm going to turn this on, and it should hold this up and shoot some of that air out. Once it gets solid, then I can essentially quickly shut it. It's going to be kind of a mess. Open. Little pump's working. Having the air going in. It's gonna heat up. Let's see if my rubber caulk gasket can withstand the heat differences, because it's fine when it was cold, and now it's getting nice and hot. Water temperature slowly going up. That's how to replace the nozzle and oil filter on your oil-fired boiler. If you have radiant heat, but the radiator isn't radiating heat, don't call the plumbing and heating technician just yet. You may need to bleed the radiator. A hot water radiator system works by circulating hot water in pipes, making the iron radiator fins very hot, which then radiate heat throughout the room. Cold water then circulates back to the boiler, which will be heated again. This system can provide very efficient heat when working well. The problem is when they fill up with air over time, allowing less and less hot water into the fins, which can remain cold even when the heat is turned on. If the top or all of the radiator is cold to the touch, try opening the bleeding valve. For this, ideally, you'll have a key, which can be bought pretty cheaply at a hardware store or online. If you're like me and too impatient to get the right tools, you may have a small needle nose pliers on hand that may do the trick. First step, turn off the heat so you don't get scalded. Then put some rags on the floor under the valve. Insert the key or grip the inside of the valve with the pliers and turn counterclockwise just enough till you start hearing a hissing sound. That'll be the air escaping. Water pressure will push all the air out of the bleeder valve until you start to see some water dripping. When you see water dripping and the hissing stops, turn the valve clockwise to shut the valve, and then it'll be closed and no longer drips. The radiator will then be full and will begin heating the room properly. If this doesn't work, then you may have to have a technician come out and look at other issues that might be causing the problem. But I hope it does work. Thanks for watching, and subscribe for more tips.